One dating show story revolved around a contestant we shall call Denise. Denise was an older woman with an engaging personality, a strong on-air presence, and a somewhat husky voice. Jim chatted with Denise for an unusually long time, which apparently gave Denise the courage to divulge something very personal about her life. At one point, Denise had been a man named Dennis. Dennis apparently had his little Dennis surgically converted several years earlier, and Denise replaced Dennis on her driver's license. Jim allowed a few seconds of dead air to pass before responding to her with an uncharacteristically tepid, "Oh, really?" The mental picture I had in my head was a switchboard filled with blinking lights suddenly going dark. The 5-second delay button got friction burns as Jim dutifully worked his way through the ineligible callers. Finally, a few legitimate calls did get through, and he was able to arrange an off-air number exchange between Denise and a man from the progressive city of Akron, Ohio. Jim would later say on air that he had his doubts about Denise and her claims of transsexualism. He became convinced she was a male prank caller who wanted to see how far he could go with the character before Jim hung up on him. A few years later, the station set up a remote broadcast of the dating show at a restaurant near Akron. By now, Jim was a local institution, and a lot of former participants wanted to meet him to provide updates or whatever. That night, a woman came up to Jim during a commercial break and introduced herself as Denise. Yes, that Denise. She told Jim the date itself didn't work out, but the decision to appear on his show as Denise gave her the confidence to re-enter the dating world as a woman, not as a transvestite. She thanked Jim for treating her with respect, even after the awkward turn their original on-air conversation took. Jim mentioned meeting Denise on a later show, noting that she was a very striking woman, and most people would never guess she once had a different set of equipment. Some of the hookups arranged during the show took very bad turns in real life. Most were of the "now some creepy guy has my phone number" variety, but a few were more serious. This is one reason why the host and the producers of the dating show encouraged contestants to meet their blind dates at public locations and to use their best judgment when it came to future dates or the sharing of more personal information. The station itself could not be held liable for the actions of contestants or callers, so the show relied heavily on people playing nicely with each other. If things didn't work out after the first date, one person should go this way and the other one should go that way. Two ships and all that. However, this wasn't always the case, and one night Jim nearly paid the ultimate price for introducing the wrong two people. Apparently, the first date did not go well at all, since one of them was not a manic-depressive psychopath with anger management issues. The other one decided that the dating show must pay for putting him together with a woman who did not drink his favorite brand of crazy juice. He called the WNIR studios in search of Jim Albrecht. The message was he was coming to kill him, and hell was coming with him. Click. The station called several local law enforcement agencies, and they soon had enough information to identify the man and the car he was driving. Because this was all unfolding in real time, listeners would periodically call the station with updates. The car was now in Stowe, the car was seen on 59, the car was in downtown Kent, etc. None of this information was of much comfort to Jim, who decided to host the show from underneath his desk that night. Eventually, the man and his car were detained on the road, which led to the WNIR studio. The police discovered several empty bottles of alcohol and a loaded revolver in the vehicle. The man continued to issue threats against the dating show while being escorted to the Kent City Jail. When news of the man's capture reached Jim, he thanked all of his listeners for their support and diligence and resumed his show after a longer than usual commercial break. For those of us listening to the drama unfold over the air, it was a useful object lesson on the hazards of setting up blind dates for a living. The dating show format would eventually lose out to personal ads in tabloid newspapers for singles, then the much wider net of internet dating websites like Match.com and Great Expectations. More single people wanted to know their potential dates had been professionally vetted, or at least provided legitimate information on their applications and profiles. The randomness and public scrutiny of a call-in radio dating show was no longer as appealing as it had once been. But for a few glorious years in the Stowe area, Jim and WNIR did bring a lot of lonely people together, and that can only be a good thing.